The following is a paid commercial announcement. The ideas and opinions addressed in this show do not reflect the views of WKBK or Saga Communications. From the Davis Oil and Propane Company studios, it's time for Financial Wellness Weekly. The opinions voiced in this broadcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Time now for Financial Wellness Weekly on WKBK.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through LPL Enterprise, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC, and an affiliate of LPL Financial. Financial professionals are licensed insurance agents of Prudential. These financial professionals are permitted to brand under Prudential. LPL and LPLE Financial are not affiliated with Chartered Financial Services or Prudential. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Hello, and welcome to Financial Wellness Weekly on WKBK, Keens News Station. This is Liz Newcomb with Chartered Financial Services, and I'm joined by
Nina Benton today. Hello.
Hi. And we have been working our way through some key topics of conversation and things to be thinking about as you are approaching retirement and moving through your 50s and towards your 60s.
Right. Yes. Last week we started talking about even before your 50s, working on accumulation. And then in your 50s, some of the important milestones and things for us to look at. And now we're actually up to the 60s.
Yes.
So in the 60s, we have some real decisions to make, and we can start putting our thinking hats on for actual retirement. All the other years, really, we've been building up to it.
Yes, accumulating, saving, getting ducks in a row. But things are starting to get real in your 60s. It's getting closer.
Yeah.
It's more critical that if you put things off before, you really need to get them in order by now.
Absolutely. And in the 50s, people start to realize that with the catch-ups and the different things where we are now allowed to try to make up for lost time.
Exactly.
So now in the 60s, there are some considerations. Actually, the one we're going to start with is really good at any point in time.
Right.
And those are Roth conversions. Liz, why don't you tell us, first of all, let's define what a conversion is, and then let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly.
Sure.
Okay.
So Roth conversions are different from Roth contributions. They are when you take money that has been put into a traditional pre-tax type of account, whether an IRA, a traditional IRA, or even a traditional 401k. That money you got a deduction on when you put it in. It's been growing tax deferred. And if you didn't do anything to it, once you retire and take it out, that money is taxable income to you. The conversion is a way to take that money or whatever amount you'd like and move it into a Roth account. At that time, you are essentially on the hook for the taxes that you've been deferring.
So at tax time, that will add to your income.
It will.
Okay, so that's something people have to be aware of when they do. They don't have to necessarily pay the taxes at the moment that they're doing it. And in fact, we don't want them to take the money out of the conversion amount, do we?
Ideally, no, because you want all of that money to go into the Roth and have a chance to grow. And ideally, if you're going to be doing Roth conversions, you would have some savings that you could pay the tax bill with once the tax bill comes due. Absolutely. But it's a way to get that money into a status where now, assuming that you meet certain requirements, one of them is that you have to wait 5 years before the growth on that conversion is able to be touched without penalties. But if you've met the 5-year requirement and you've had a Roth IRA and you're over 59 and a half.
Another key age, right? 59 and a half.
Yes, and that's kind of why we're mentioning it now. Then those conversions are now tax-free to you. So if you didn't have the opportunity to be contributing to a Roth earlier, maybe because your income was too high or it didn't occur to you, but now you're realizing that you want more tax-free money in retirement, then the conversions are a way to do that.
Right. And you can work with your accountant and your advisor to see how much you want to do each year. It's not an all or nothing. You don't have to do it all in 1 year. You could actually work through years. And in some years, if either circumstantially you have less income or you're planning on having less income, that might not be a bad year to do it.
Exactly. And when the markets are down, it's a great time to do it as well, because you're essentially taking the value that's lower, moving it into the Roth, and we know it's going to come back. And when it comes back,
so moving more shares.
Gotcha. Exactly.
Okay.
So
good.
It's a way to just maximize your opportunity there.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And then the other thing about Roths is that they don't have required minimum distributions.
Exactly.
And I know we're going to speak about required minimum distributions as we go through our decades of talking about retirement and important considerations at certain ages. But 70s is a period when required minimum distributions start. And we'll go over those and talk about the impact that can have on a person's plan. Yeah.
Well, maybe we should touch on the bad and the ugly, Nina, since we said we were going to.
Why not? Yeah. Well, you kind of started to.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing to keep in mind, of course, is that you do have to have money to be able to pay the tax bill.
Right.
At the time that you're doing the conversions or when those taxes are due. But also, it could push you into a higher bracket, which you need to be mindful of if you're approaching the age of Medicare, for example.
Or 2 years before that.
That's right.
So starting at age 63, we need, and we'll be speaking about Medicare either later this session or in our next session. So that's a topic that is very confusing to a lot of people, but their premiums are based on your taxable income from 2 years previous to when you are actually
Right. And depending on your future tax bracket, it might or might not mean that you end up getting more use of your money, right? It really is going to depend on your tax situation. But people will do Roth conversions for different reasons. And sometimes it's because they want the ability to have their kids inherit money that their kids don't have to pay taxes on and don't have to take RMDs on.
Yes.
So, different reasons.
And when we talk about our distribution strategies, when we get to that point in this session, we'll also mention them again, because as we've mentioned a number of times in our various sessions, building flexibility in your retirement years is one of the primary objectives when we look at the accumulation phase targets. So building non-qualified accounts, building tax-free accounts, and not as ideal, the taxable accounts, but looking at how we can maximize the first two to enable retirees to have as much flexibility as possible. So this goes right into that.
Exactly. Yep. So next, I think we maybe should talk about the ages that you can take Social Security.
Because now we're in our 60s, right? Now we're looking at things that we should be considering in our 60s.
Yes.
And 60s, really, that's the age at which a lot of people start wondering, when should I take it? When can I take it? And what makes the most sense?
Exactly. And I sometimes feel like there is a lot of confusion about full retirement age. What does that mean? And, what is really the impact of taking it the earliest possible that you can, which would be 62. Versus waiting until the latest possible age you can take it, which would be 70.
And we're not talking about exceptions with widows or survivors or anything like that. Right now we're just speaking about the general rules for most people. And that is, it used to be that Social Security was aligned with Medicare and the quote unquote normal retirement age. And that used to be 65. And so things were based on hitting the age of 65.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. But that isn't true anymore. No. So Social Security, in fact, for anybody born 1960 and beyond, your full retirement age, the age at which you get your full earned Social Security, is actually age 67. And for the years before, it's 2 months less for every year before that. So, for example, if I were born in 1959, my full retirement age is 66 and 10 months.
Yep. So if you were born between 1956 and 1959, it's going to be 66 and some change, essentially.
Right. Exactly. Building you up.
Yeah. And so one of the things I love about waiting is that it's really the only time you get an automatic 8% raise.
That's a good raise.
For waiting.
Yeah.
Every
Compounded,
year
too.
that you
Yes.
wait, 8% more compounding that you
Right.
get.
That's terrific. But the majority of people, unfortunately, take it as soon as they can. They don't even wait for their full retirement age.
And why do you think that they do that, Nina?
I think people are fearful that Social Security won't be there. I think people are concerned that want the money now because they've contributed to it and they just want to get it back. Some people may actually truly need it. Other people may not have longevity on their side and wonder, what is my break-even point? Which, by the way, SSA.gov is a fabulous site, and they have break-even calculators to see what is that special age for you. But what we don't have, of course, is that crystal ball of what is our longevity?
Right.
How long are we going to live?
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, which is that there are some really bad reasons to take it early, maybe not understanding how much more they could get if they waited and things like that, maybe misconceptions about it. But also there could be some good reasons to take it early.
There could be valid reasons to take it early.
If everyone in your family has passed away from a heart attack at, 60 and you already have outlived them by 62, I could understand why you might want to consider taking it early if you don't think you're going to live to 88 or whatever the break-even point would be for waiting.
Right. A couple of other things that factor into it and are also misconceptions. When people get their Social Security statements, because they have started sending them again.
Really?
They went through a point of saying, no, we're not trying to save money. We're not going to send them. You have to go online. And everybody just whooped and hollered and said, gosh, that's hard to remember our passwords and all the hoops they make you
Especially with the
jump
several
through.
different ways you can log in now.
That's crazy. So they have started sending them out again. And what people don't realize is that, remember your full retirement age that we just spoke about? Those numbers, when you look at the Social Security benefit, they are based on you working until your full retirement age. It's not, okay, I'm 60 now. If I stop when I'm 60, this is going to be my benefit. So very important to understand that you have to continue to earn because Social Security is based on your highest 35 years of earning. And typically in our 60s, we're in our highest earning years. So those are numbers that contribute greatly to Social Security. But the other misconception or something to think about when we're thinking about when do I start my Social Security is if I am one of a couple. So there are spousal benefits and there are survivorship benefits. If something were to happen to me and my Social Security at my full retirement age is higher than my husband's, if I take it early and therefore reduce my own, my husband isn't going to get the 50% of my full retirement age benefit. He's going to get a percentage of the benefit that I took. So
I think that's a really important thing to mention because if there is one spouse that's earning more, then that spouse is probably going to have the higher benefit for life. And the longer they wait, the bigger that benefit is. And if that spouse passes away, then the other spouse is going to get the higher of the two. And that amount would be significantly higher if that higher earning spouse had waited either till full age or till 70, leaving that partner in a much stronger financial position after they go.
Because it's already a reduction of one Social Security. And when one spouse passes, expenses don't have. You still have your same property tax. You still have your same water bill. Food might go down. Some leisure things may go down. But it does not go in half.
Right.
You know, so important planning with Social Security. Absolutely. So let's look at, maybe give some of the examples of the percentage reduction.
Sure.
So that people fully understand. If my full retirement age were 66 and I actually started at 64, Liz, what would my reduction be? I'm going to sneeze, so I'm going to step away.
God bless you in advance.
It's going to go away now that I said that, but it did.
At 64, it would be 13.3% reduction versus your full benefit if your age were 66.
Wow, and if I started at 62, when a lot of people want to start?
25% less for life.
That's big.
That's a lot.
That is big. Now, yes, they'll still get the cost of living increase, but on a much lower number.
Right.
So why do that when a lot of us don't have pensions, and this can be considered that sort of a pension for people who get this. So good planning, be guided by somebody. You know, as we're working, we are contributing to it, and that's why people say, "Well, I've been doing this." One of the quick fixes on Social Security, by the way, before we move on from it, is, you know, with Medicare, for example, the Medicare tax, we all don't like taxes, but still, that's how we fund this. And the taxes that we pay are on our entire income. It does not have a cap to it. But Social Security currently does have a cap. So the contribution for tax stops at once you earn over $184,500. Now, if they simply removed that cap, that would help with a lot of the funding issues. But of course, that's not a favorable thing to do now, is it? If someone is going to want to be reelected or perhaps other things, although maybe people will understand that, yes, this is securing their Social Security and allowing them the confidence to know that they maybe should be maximizing it and not start it immediately.
Yeah, no,
Two
that's
sides
such a good
to the coin.
point. And I think people don't really ever realize that. A lot of people have never heard that there's a cap. So if you make, $300,000, you're not paying Social Security taxes on
And
that
lucky
full
you.
amount. Yeah,
But-
lucky you.
One last thing also, I know I keep saying that, but there are so many important points to make. But a lot of people also consider starting there, if you're at your full retirement age and you're still working. You know, there is a penalty for starting Social Security while you're still working if you're earning above certain amounts and
Before your full
retirement age. So, if I have income that is above about $65,000, I am going to have to return $1 for every $2 of my Social Security that I get. Now, you actually do get that back. It gets factored back into your benefit once you are of full retirement age. But sometimes that's just not the right decision, and people don't understand the impact of some decisions because they don't know all the factors.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, can I ask you a question, Nina?
Please.
What if I am 63 and I have started my Social Security benefit and then I get a really great job offer and I decide to take it, but I've already started my
this
social?
This is a stumper. Okay. So they've recently changed these rules. You keep me honest here and true to make sure I'm going to say the right one. But you are allowed to stop it if it is within the 12 months of when you started it. You do have to repay it, though. You have to repay all the benefit. But if you're still working or you got another job and you might be able to, and you only started it because you didn't have a position that you were planning on having, that might not be a bad option.
Yeah. No, that's what I was getting at. Awesome. And otherwise, again, maybe you still take the great job. It gives you those extra years of earning. But again, you're going to have your Social Security benefit docked and you'll get that money back later once you do hit your full retirement age. So not the end of the world, just a little bit of a inconvenience, especially if you weren't expecting that initially.
To happen. Yes. Yeah. Well, now let's turn 65.
Yes, another big milestone year.
Absolutely is. Absolutely. And the biggest thing, other than people kind of in our heads always thinking 65 is retirement, which may or may not be true, because a lot of people, as they approach that age, start to actually get really nervous and think about, well, what the heck am I going to do with all my time, especially if they like their job or they like their clients or the people they work with.
I remember my dad getting to that age and he was like, I'm doing better than I've ever done and I love what I'm doing. I'm better at it than I ever was. And why would I stop now?
Exactly. Yes. So, and it also doesn't have to be a full stop. It could be a transitional where maybe you slow down a little bit, maybe you don't work 5 or 7 days a week. Maybe you do take some time off. Maybe you just work certain days. So you invent your own retirement, which is fun. But something else that pops up at 65, and that's eligibility for Medicare.
Medicare. Not Medicaid,
No.
Medicare.
Yes, those two words seem to confuse people. Maybe not the concept, but the word itself. People might mean Medicare, but they say Medicaid. Medicaid is our welfare system. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about our health care in retirement time, which is typically Medicare. Now, teachers and maybe some other people may be fortunate enough to have other types of health care that is either offered to them or provided for them even. But we're speaking to the general public, the majority of us who have to switch over at 65 or later if we're still working at 65. But there are certain ramifications and things to do. So Liz, can you tell us a little bit more about what I call the alphabet soup of Medicare?
Yes, absolutely. So I like to, so there's different parts. The part B is, and I'll start with B because it's the kind that we most often think of when we think of your basic coverage for doctor's visits and the most typical types of care that people need on a regular basis.
Right.
And that's the part which has a cost that if you're taking Social Security, it's going to automatically just be deducted from your Social Security. If you're not yet on Social Security, you're going to have to be paying that in. But as of, and this maybe it has been adjusted for 26, but as of 2025, here we go. We've got the 26 numbers. $202.90 per month for 2026. Up from $185 last year.
And that's just the base amount, right? We'll talk a little bit about, remember we said from 2 years prior, depending on your taxable income, what it is, that amount can go up.
Yep. And maybe we should just kind of go into a little bit more detail about what Part B includes.
Yeah. Tell us what you said. So it's doctor visits.
Yeah.
What else is it?
So it is your basic care. So your, what's the word I'm looking for, Nina? Read my brain.
Okay. So Part B gives us the capability for going to see, your preventive care.
There we go, preventative.
Your preventive care when you go for your health checkups, your outpatient medical care. Yep. That's typically Part B. And that is the part that you think about when you think about typically your medical insurance. Of course, then we also have to think about the not so great things like if we need to get hospitalized. Typically, unless you're having a baby, it's not really for a good thing always.
Yes, and that's Part A.
Part A, that's the part that we pay for as long as we've worked for at least 10 years. That we've then paid for from our FICA taxes. Remember, there is no limit on the income that we earn. So we're paying into that. If you're employed, your employer is also paying those taxes as well. But then we are able to get Part A and sign up for it when we're 65. But what if we're still working and we're 65? Do we sign up for it? That's a decision people have to make because there are some implications when you do that. And it may be that it becomes secondary while you're working for hospitalization, but something a lot of people don't understand. And we'll speak more deeply either later or at our next session about Medicare and HSAs, health savings accounts. But if you have a high deductible health plan and you're contributing to your HSA while you're working, and you figure, well, I'm 65. Let me just sign up for Part A because I've been contributing to it. Might as well. Doesn't cost me anything. Then you can no longer start contributing to continue contributing to your HSA.
That's a really, really important thing to know.
People do need to think about that.
Yep. So we'll come back and we'll talk more about Parts C and D, but we've covered Part B, which is your standard preventive care and doctor visits, and your Part A, which is included usually for free, and that is your hospital care.
Wonderful. You've been listening to Chartered Financial Services on Financial Wellness Weekly on WKBK. We will be back shortly.
Welcome back. You are listening to Financial Wellness Weekly with Chartered Financial Services on WKBK. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in a future session, or if you have any financial questions that you'd like to set up a meeting and discuss with us. Our number is 1-800-549-6007, and our email, cfs@prudential.com. Again, this is Liz Newcomb, and I'm here with Nina Benton.
Hey there, and we do have an office in Keene, right on Washington Street as well. So we are local as well as national, aren't we now?
We are. And we have been talking today all about things to be thinking about as you are approaching retirement in your 60s. We're about halfway through just a brief kind of overview of Medicare benefits. We've just talked about Parts B and A, which is your basic preventative medical coverage, Part B, and Part A, your hospital coverage, which is included at no additional cost. And there's also Part D, Nina. Do you want to tell us what that means?
Yes, Part D is the drug coverage. And that's the part that has your medicines, the pharmaceuticals, the different things. And it's an important thing to think about when we think of Medicare. When we're all employed, typically there's some point in the year where there's open enrollment and we can make our decisions for the next year. Because as we know, things change. And not only coverages change, but maybe your doctors go in and out of plans, your health changes, your medicines change, your conditions change. Some do improve, some don't, some show up, some, things happen. And so each year it's advantageous. And right around the open enrollment time at the end of the year, there are typically counselors who don't charge a fee to help you look at the way you use your healthcare program and the medicines that you take to decide which of these are the best plans for you. Because Part D is sometimes confounding people. They may not think about all of their medicines and then have rude surprises when they find out that a medicine they take is not covered.
Right. And it sounds like you are telling us that you have options.
Absolutely. Tons of options. And sometimes having a lot of options makes it even harder because you really don't know what to pick. So what we typically do for our clients is refer them to a counselor and make sure they talk.
There's so much to know about this, and things are changing so much.
All the time. You need an expert to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, depending on your particular health situation, the medications that you need or don't need, whether you need a Medicare Advantage plan, which is
what's that?
Part C, and that's
Pray
the type
tell. What is that?
That would add extra benefits for you because there are some things that are not covered by Medicare Part B or A. For example, vision, dental, a lot of out-of-pocket costs.
All the things as we age, right? Our hearing goes, our eyesight goes, and our feet, podiatry. None of those are in now, we've introduced a lot of things. Let's just, before you continue, let's just segment original Medicare. So the original Medicare is Part A, hospitalization that you pay for while you're working. Part B, preventive care, doctor's visits. That's what you pay for once you enroll in it. And Part D, that is the prescription medication. Then typically on top of that, what we haven't spoken to, you get a Medicare supplemental plan, a MedSup or a Medigap plan.
Medigap or...
That's all part of the original type of plan. But then the Part C, I guess they realized they went ABD. So Part C sprung up, and that's the Advantage plan. And those, that kind of bundles everything together. It puts A, B, D, and some of Medigap's into one plan. So everyone might be saying, well, why wouldn't I do that? Well, it is a little bit more, it's a little bit less flexible than the original Medicare. If you have the original Medicare and you go around the country, any place that accepts Medicare, you can get services at. Versus for the Advantage plans, typically they are geographically located and identified, number one. And number two, typically you need pre-authorization. Remember the old HMOs? Remember that? That's really what the C plans are. But they may be more encompassing, as you said. They may have dental. With A, B, D, and the Medigap, you need to get a separate vision, dental, podiatry type coverage.
So it sounds like there's a lot to really know, and that there's a lot that could impact which direction you go. Medicare Advantage, Medigap, marrying things together or bundling. And so this is where really having a specialist thinking about this early and starting to evaluate your specific situation well in advance to make sure that you can make a good informed decision is really important.
Let's focus on that well in advance statement, because the initial enrollment period for any person, IEP, is a 7-month period. It's the 3 months before you're going to turn 65, the month you turn 65, and 3 months after. And so if you do not register and sign up during that time, you could actually lose benefits, because after that point or within certain other timelines, depending on if you're working beyond age 65 or not, if you don't adhere to those timelines, first of all, there could be penalties that will last for the rest of your life. Like 10% additional fees, 1% per month for Part D of how long you've waited to sign up. So pretty awful penalties that could have bad impacts on our finances, but also underwriting impacts. So when you're in your initial periods of moving from one type of plan to the other, from an employer or whatever you have coverage on now, when you turn 65, you don't need to get underwritten. But if you do switch plans, or if you wait, you may need to get that underwriting. And going in and out of Advantage plans, remember that's the Part C, that can be difficult because you may not qualify. It is possible that you can't qualify for certain plans. And that just becomes catastrophic. So we try to avoid those sorts of things by having a little bit of knowledge, being guided by people who know
early. And just thinking about it. And maybe we could just touch quickly on what happens if you're working past 65.
Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially you must enroll 8 months from your last month of work. Otherwise, your coverage could be delayed for 3 to 15 months, and you are going to be subject to that 10% penalty. For every 12 months of delay. So you might not mean to be delayed in signing up, but it's easy for it to happen just without, the proper planning.
There's a term called creditable coverage. So I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds, but it's important because if you do not have creditable coverage, then and you're turning 65, then that's where that penalty could come in. And one of the things that doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you have COBRA is the coverage that you have. Let's say I get let go and I now am unemployed. Typically, the larger employees have to cover me for up to 18 months on my current plan. I'll pay more for it. In fact, I'll pay 102% of not only what I paid into it, but also what my employer was paying into it. But I'll have coverage for that 18-month period. So if I'm turning 65 during that period of time and I don't get in touch with Medicare to say, hey, I'm turning 65, this is my situation, I may be rudely surprised at the end of that 18-month period that I will now have a penalty because Medicare does not consider COBRA coverage creditable coverage.
Wow, that's so important to know.
So we need to make sure that what I recommend for our clients is 3 months before they turn 65, whether they are working or not, to get in touch with Medicare and let them know. And if you're working, supply them with evidence of creditable coverage, which is very easy to get. It's the 1099 that you get at the end of the year from your employer showing what's being paid into in the plan that you have. And so you just get in touch with your benefits division, and they will provide that for you so that you have it on record. Now, Medicare may say, yeah, you don't need to do that. But we've heard of some really awful stories where people have been told that. And then when they, at either age 67 or 70, decide finally they're ready to hang up their hat and start relaxing a little more and go over to Medicare, that they are getting a penalty because there was no evidence of creditable coverage all that time, even though that person did call and was told, no, you don't have to do it. So better safe than sorry.
Okay. Wow. Well, I think that's a good, brush
primer,
a good primer for a future session we'll do on the, a deeper dive on Medicare. But so another thing that I think it's really important to start thinking about once you get to age 65, whether you are right on the edge of retiring or maybe still a handful of years away, is to really start thinking more about, transitioning to the retirement income phase. Eventually, you're going to need to switch gears from putting money into your retirement accounts to taking money out.
That's scary. That scares so many people. It's so hard because all of our lives, we've been accumulating, and all of a sudden, people have a pool, whatever it is, made up of whatever, and then they realize that they have to start pulling from that pool. And that's really a scary moment.
Right. And there's so many things that can go wrong. I mean, unfortunately, market volatility, if it comes at a bad time. Right as you're getting ready to start taking income, if your portfolio takes a dive and your plan was to just kind of think about it later and you were maybe invested too aggressively for that stage of the game and now you have to take out at a loss, that can really have disastrous impacts on your success in retirement. But also, there are so many things that impact our success in retirement, such as longevity, inflation. Just the cost of living is so high and it's constantly going up, even when your portfolio might not be going up.
Right. And that first risk you were talking about, that market risk, that's we call that the sequence of returns, because that really does have a very strong impact on the longevity, not only of you, but your portfolio.
Right.
And it's takes a lot of time to think about that and really understand. And there's some really interesting charts that show, the portfolio or returns in a favorable manner, and then with positive returns in the early years, and then negative returns later, and what the impact would be on a portfolio. And then they actually flip that and show what happens if those exact same returns, so the same long-term average, but those negatives happened in the first decade or years of retirement, and the good returns in the later, has a very, very different story to tell and much lesser average returns. So sequence of returns, which is also something we cannot control.
Exactly, or anticipate,
so
really.
We need to control what is within our little sphere of control. And what are those things? What are the things that we can control?
So, I mean, certainly we can control the risk in the portfolio, and sometimes
bucketing strategies.
A bucketing strategy.
Right.
So maybe moving some assets to a safer position, planning to dip into those first. We can control whether we maybe put in some guaranteed income into the plan.
Right. Annuities are taking much more of a face in people's portfolios to remove longevity risk and market risk. And it's not your grandma's annuity anymore. Mm-hmm. Those expensive ones where you put the money in and if you don't use it, you lose it, sort of a thing. But especially, nowadays, they're very flexible. They offer protections against loss. They offer guarantees on income, depending on the different type that you want, or a fixed growth rate or things like that. So They're an important part of our portfolios now.
Right, right. And also just knowing how much that you can take out and being able to, if you're not going to implement some kind of guaranteed income or, protection bucket, then you have to be willing to take less from your portfolio if it goes down.
Right. When the market goes down, you have to be flexible. You definitely have to be flexible. We also, at this point in time, take a look at what are the different vehicles that we've been saving in? And hopefully we've addressed this earlier if we've gotten together before that. But, the non-qualified accounts, what are the taxable impacts from the various accounts that we have to draw from so that what is the flexibility from a tax perspective that we have in case taxes are raised and we don't want to pull from certain accounts at certain times, or we want to try to stay within a certain tax bracket. How can we pull from here and there to keep us within that bracket? So to what you started this session with was the Roth conversion. Sometimes that plays a role even now when people realize that, geez, it's always something I meant to do, but just never got around to doing it. And I really would like to have some tax-free income, maybe, for later in life or whenever, but it's a good time to do it when you realize that you would like to have that bucket of money.
Yeah, exactly. And it also could be a time to talk to your financial advisor about, shifting some of the positions within your portfolio to ones that give off more income. So maybe more dividend stocks instead of more growth stocks, things that will help provide more of a predictable, maybe not perfectly predictable, but more income versus growth. Just another way to kind of switch gears and start preparing for that next phase.
Definitely partnering with someone, because it's not just a financial decision when you retire. It's an emotional decision as well. We as Americans typically define ourselves by our jobs and what you do. Like, what's the first thing you ask someone when you meet them?
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do? Oh, I'm retired. So sometimes that identity is very difficult to give up. So what I like to do with my clients is more fun. It's kind of as we're starting to think about retirement, start to think about what has to happen in your life to make you happy. What are the things that you want to do? And let's start incorporating some of them, or let's start getting you involved with or in groups, or knowing the groups to get involved with, so that there isn't this stark hole when you stop. Now, of course, the first thing we're all going to do when we retire is go to sleep for a month, right? Wake up and clean out all of our closets. I think that's like the most general thing I can say that really applies to pretty much everybody.
Take a breath.
Exactly. Reset. Just do that. And then realize that you're bored, and then move on. Yeah. And then you can start re-identifying and rebuilding your life. But anticipating that and really understanding what are the things that you want to do, because a lot of people do get depressed once they go into retirement because of these things. Sometimes they might not have thought about how lonely they might be if friends aren't retiring, or if they're all doing other things and they're not things of interest that you want to do. So it's equally as important, and should have as much time considered to it, is that to make that switch seamless.
Yeah. And also thinking about how might your lifestyle change. Are you going to be spending more or less money when you're retired? Are you going to be traveling less for work, or do you want to see the world? In which case, we've got to start setting aside a budget for international cruises.
Right. Typically, people do initially spend more, and why not? It's the go-go years, right? The first, depending on when you retire, but typically the first 10 to 15 years, if you're lucky, of retirement are the go-go years, when you're young enough, you're healthy enough, you're active enough that you can do that bucket list. And then we move on to the slow go years, where our body starts saying, okay, and we've hit some of the things that we want. And then we have the no-go years, where we're perfectly happy to stay at home, be with friends, family, and not do a whole lot. So those are the types of stages and things that we need to anticipate. And that's also where an advisor can help walk you through it, because we see it all the time. Some people say, no, that's not going to be me. And yet here comes life walking down the street looking at you.
Exactly. Which I think is a good segue into thinking about longevity. I know we've touched on this in lots of our other sessions as well, but knowing your family history and thinking a lot about what the impact of living to 80 versus 90 or 90 versus 95, both in terms of your quality of life, but also in terms of your portfolio. Are your assets going to last? What kinds of health, issues might you be facing if you do live a long time? Do you have a history of dementia and Alzheimer's? Or do people live to 100 but they stay sharp in your family?
Aren't you fortunate? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And just because it's happened in your family doesn't necessarily mean it will happen the same way to you. So there's only so much guessing that we can really do. But
we can prepare.
We can prepare.
We can prepare. And in that situation, we're talking as we age, of course, of care as we're aging. Are we going to need it? Are people, yes, your family will, of course. You've raised wonderful children and maybe have some great children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But at what expense would they have to take care of you? If you know they would, but do you want them to have to? So how much do you want to provide, and how do we set funds aside for maybe that eventuality that could happen? Mm-hmm. And how do we look at that?
Yeah. And I have some clients who are like, I'm never going to a nursing home. I'll take up skydiving before they put me there. And I have other clients that are like, well, I'd rather not have to be a burden on my kids,
But people could also get care in their home if they don't need it in a nursing home. And those who I know, I think you and John, did you speak about long-term care policies? Or is that
we did. We touched on, we mostly talked about it as a rider on a life insurance.
Okay.
As an
However
option.
it is, it's sometimes where we look to move that risk over, risk transference, move it over to an insurance company to help pay for part of it so that our portfolios don't have to pay for all of it.
Mm-hmm. And so that we're not left with our kids, coming out of pocket to pay for our care if we haven't planned well for those things.
But you can also be taken care of at home to the extent that that's possible.
Yeah.
So people who think of using those dollars just for nursing homes, it's that also, like annuities, they've come a long way, baby.
Mm-hmm. There's so much more choice and so much more planning you can do. And so thinking about it, even though none of us wants to think about it, I think thinking about the future and these possibilities and how you would want it to go if you find yourself in a situation where you do need care is the best first step in then making a plan that's going to help you live those years the way that you ideally want to.
Right. It's also part of the reason why we had mentioned previously in other sessions, I do believe, we want to have emergency funds and liquid reserves of higher amounts when we're in retirement. And it's for this sort of a thing where unexpected health burdens come and also just for paying for medical expenses. When we go on Medicare, nobody's going to pay for that except you. Right. And so we have to have a bucket of money to use to pay for those premiums, which hopefully will last a long time. As you will.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, segueing next into another thing that we should probably start thinking about in our mid-60s here. These are, things to start thinking of probably between the ages of 66 to 70. Essentially, what is going to – well, we've hopefully come up with a plan for Social Security, and we've figured out, when we're going to take it. We've done some – calculations there. But also, we're going to be facing required minimum distributions once we get into our 70s. Right.
And that's recently changed. They've made some changes. We had a session on the Secure Act and the Secure 2.0 and the OBBA. And right now, it used to be people, when they turned 70 and a half, had to start taking required minimum distributions. We're living a bit longer, and now they've raised that age to, if you're born up to age 1959, that age is 73. If you're born 1960 and beyond, that age is actually 75. And that's when you have to start taking from your pre-tax qualified accounts a certain percentage each year, and that percentage goes up every single year. Mm-hmm. And that makes us, two things. First of all, on those pre-tax accounts, that is going to increase your income, whether or not you need it, for the calculation for Medicare premiums. So it may be that you may have to pay more Medicare premiums because you had to start taking required minimum distributions. And we also then, when we're taking the required minimum distributions and paying that tax, which is another plug for Roth accounts, right? Because those do not have required minimum distributions. We have to start thinking about the capability of our portfolios to last as long as we do.
And what's that rule of thumb, that percentage?
The 4% rule that says, it's been debated, but it says that if you take 4% from a balanced portfolio, it should last about 30 years. But RMDs go well above 4%, starting roughly at age 75. Things to think about.
Yeah. Also, I think knowing that if you don't need to spend your RMD, that you could save it and reinvest it and other things.
Or
as well.
use it for qualified distributions, which we'll talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right? Charitable distributions. We'll talk more about that another time.
All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered some key things to think about in your 60s, from Medicare to Social Security to preparing your portfolio. We'll be back next week, noon Saturday. This has been Financial Wellness Weekly on WKBK. I'm Liz. This is Nina with Chartered Financial Services.
Don't forget to reach out to us at cfs@prudential.com or 800-549-6007. See you next time.